And we are live. Okay, excellent. So we are live now on Facebook. Thank you everyone for joining us. Um, we have an amazing crew with us today. Mary McInninch is our special guest, as well as Eric and Amanda, who we have been lucky to have in the past. But Mary is certainly one of the most preeminent lawyers when it comes to the whole employee versus independent contractor issue. We're very fortunate to have her here with us today. And in fact, I'm going to have Eric, who's going to be emceeing with us. Eric, many of you have met a few times from our webinars in the past on, financial benefits of working with IT360. And of course, Amanda, our partner from Prolink, who is our insurance specialist. So without further ado, Eric, you want to kick us off?
Yes, definitely. So, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I will start with a couple of questions that we had previously. And again, let's make this beneficial for everyone. So, Mary, in your opinion, what's the biggest risk an independent consultant faces when working without a well-established placement agency?
Thank you very much, Eric, for the question. And thank you, Andrew and Amanda, for hosting today's session. I should start by mentioning that, as Andrew said, my name is Mary McInninch. I'm the Executive Director with ACSESS. Our role is to represent the interests of the staffing and recruitment industry across the country on a wide range of policy issues. One of the issues that has dominated and been at the forefront of any government discussion over the course of the past several years is that of misclassification. And it's a topic that we have worked very hard to educate our members on. So not only are we at the table meeting with key government agencies to discuss any challenges with interpretation, but we're also working hard to educate our members in all provinces to ensure full compliance. Worker classification is a challenging issue in large part because government agencies are not aligned on this issue with respect to their interpretation. So that lack of consistency makes it even more challenging. We have a lot of great resources in the resources section of our website, and perhaps I could speak to those a little bit more later in the discussion. But working with an ACSESS member firm is key. And I should mention that we represent 85% of industry operating revenues. That translates into only 20% in terms of the actual numbers of staffing and employment agencies across the country.
Wow.
Our members abide by a very strict code of conduct. They are very well versed on their obligations in this area. Unfortunately, the industry at large would not have access to a lot of the resources. So, Eric, I think that that's a really important reason to work with an ACSESS member firm.
Good. And what role can agencies play in helping consultant, stay compliant in a time of increased government scrutiny? We did a webinar, before Christmas, where we mentioned to our viewers that we had in Canada 2,100 audits for independent consultant, and I was intrigued, in asking you that question. What role can good agency play in helping their consultant?
Yeah, I think it's key that a full understanding of your obligations in the area of, tax law, insurance, and so on and so forth is key and instrumental. Also in any employment contracts or corp to corp, of course, contracts that are engaged or entered into. It's very, very important. And I know that our members are very diligent in that regard. When they meet with independent contractors, they take the time to carefully review from a compliance standpoint to ensure that all of the boxes are checked. to ensure that, independent contractors are in fact fully independent in their own right. Failing which there could be challenges. Yes.
Perfect.
And I think if you
Go
don't mind
ahead,
me
Andrew.
just
Yeah,
commenting on
no,
this,
jump in.
because I think we're very fortunate in Canada to still have such a large and thriving independent contractor community. And I know our clients really appreciate the opportunities that come along with independent contracting. And it's really easy for that to evaporate overnight if, we're not dotting our I's and crossing our T's and managing the relationships with both the agencies and the end clients. And I think that, Mary, the whole organization at ACSESS does an incredible job of educating our industry on how to stay compliant, how to make sure that this industry can continue to thrive. Because we hear from our clients that they love being independent contractors. They love the additional freedom. They love the additional pay. Let's call us, let's be direct. But that industry could evaporate and look a lot more like what we see in the US, where the independent contracting community is not thriving in the way it is. But
it's shrinking.
That will only remain if the staffing agencies and the end clients are working within the rules that both the CRA and the government is giving us from an Employment Standards Act perspective as well. And the problem is that those two systems don't touch and communicate effectively. And Mary is going to be your expert on the legal side of it, and helping make sure that this industry continues to thrive and stand up for your rights as independent contractors. And obviously we specialize more on the CRA side, but without your help and your lead in all these things that we do, and the education, and then the support that the firms provide to this organization so that we can lobby the government, we can tell them that, hey, this is not a situation like the gig economy where people are being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And this is an industry that the independent contractors love and they want to continue to thrive. Now, we do have some bad actors out there who try to play both sides of the fence. Like I'm an independent contractor for tax purposes, but I'm an employee for, ESA, which could potentially wipe the entire industry away. And I think that's the value of working with a ACSESS member firm, is they have this knowledge, they have this expertise, and they have these resources to ensure that we support and continue to drive this industry forward. So
very good comment.
I hope you don't mind me jumping
Andrew.
in on that.
No, that was very good addition, Andrew. I'm curious, you mentioned that a little bit, Mary, and well, obviously I'm from Montreal, so I saw the fight that the firm and the independent consultant had to do back in 2012. But how do you see the evolution of provincial and federal regulations? We have CRA, we have the province, it's not a moving target, but it's difficult because everybody has their own agenda. So how do you see the evolution of that?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, Éric, and I think that remains probably should be our area of focus. It's an important one that we really need to continue to work on. And I say that because I think we've come a long way with respect to the important role we play in educating government agencies, but we're still finding that despite our efforts, there is a lack of consistency in interpretation, which makes it very, very challenging. We work closely, I want to say back around that time in 2015, so going back 10 years now, with the WSIB in Ontario, which is the Workers' Compensation Board of Ontario. We worked on IT contractor determination guidelines. They were, when we started off, what they had recommended in terms of applying the organizational or fourfold test, which all of you know very well, was very different than the requirements that existed at the federal level with the CRA. And I think that here, not different from the US, but I think there's a greater appreciation, recognition, and respect for our members' role and independent contractor status here north of the border. But that I would say will continue to be a challenge because, of course, we want to see that consistency, right? And as you all know, government agencies often don't liaise or work closely together, certainly not our friends at the provincial and federal level. So I think that's an evolving issue. I think we've made some progress, but there's a long way to go.
Thank you, Mary. One last one. Well, I'm a consultant, let's say, okay, so what would you advise a consultant to look for when evaluating an agency and see which one will have my back? You know, I mean, because a lot of time what I see is contractors calling us or Andrew or Amanda and complaining sometime about what's required by agencies. Oh, why do I need this? I was working with another agency and they didn't requested that, you know, I mean, so if I am an independent consultant in Canada and I usually work with an agency, how can I determine on top of the fact that, yes, probably if they're a member of ACSESS, you know, I mean, it gives us some indication that at least they follow a certain sets of guideline. What would you look for in an agency to have that feeling of, yes, I think that they're acting on my behalf or having my back?
Yes, good question. And I think that most certainly one of the key considerations is to, well, always as part of onboarding to ask the right questions, right? And now with new licensing requirements, you know, in most provinces, most Canadian provinces, I think you most certainly want to ensure not only that the firm in question, of course, is an ACSESS member and abides by a strict code of ethics, but also that they're fully licensed with the appropriate surety bond, because a lot of the community, whether it be employees in their own right or independent contractors, and that's where we need to do more of a role to educate to ensure everyone's aware. But that should be a very, very important first question to validate and ensure that the agency in question is in fact licensed. The other consideration would be to maybe test the individual's knowledge with respect to, before you engage or agree to work with the staffing firm, to ensure that they are well versed on the application of the organizational test with respect to, you know, how you need to govern yourself, shall we say, as an independent contractor. So to ask those questions, and again, we have a number of resources that have been put together based primarily on the outcomes of late in both in common law and with respect to government agencies on how to ensure that you're, you know, appropriately classified. And a lot of those resources can be accessed. I would encourage every independent contractor to review those carefully.
That's a good point. Me, you know, I'm on the other side. You know, a lot of time, independent consultant will consult with us, you know, can you review this? You know, they're asking for that. Should I have this? Should I have that? What I realize is that there's a lot of, as an industry, a lot of misinformation, okay? And a lot of myth and rumors, you know, and yes, you and the ACSESS group definitely must work, and I know you are working with the different government level, you know, to make sure that they make this a little bit more black and white. We are sometime in a grayish area, but when they contact me, I'm always flabbergasted, you know, to realize that even in 2025, people are upset when an agency put in their contract that they require the independent consultant to have a certain base thing like error and omission, general liability, disability coverage in case that they cannot perform their work. Do you have like some kind of a safety net, you know? But I realize that it's still misunderstood or unknown because some agencies don't ask for that. So, yes, I think, you know, and I'm brainstorming with you, you know, I think that as an industry, yes, we need to do lobbying at the government level to clarify and make sure that everybody understand what we do as an industry, but also on the staffing agency side, maybe to be a little bit more in tune. Why some ask for E&O general liability in their contract, some others don't, you know, and I mean, so it could be, I do that day in and day out for the past 15 years, but I put myself sometime in the shoes of independent contractor, and it could be confusing sometime, don't you think?
I do. And that's why we have our partners in the insurance realm who are experts. And Amanda's with us today, and certainly the team at Prolink know this issue inside out and support our efforts very closely. We've held joint webinars together. And I think it's key for independent contractors to be particularly well versed, as mentioned earlier, in the area of taxation, also in the area of insurance. Unfortunately, again, there are a lot of unethical, illegal operators, and that's part of our mandate to ensure those particular entities are, well, ideally put out of business, that are misguiding. And they're the ones that unfortunately cause us to have to demystify. You're right, Éric. There are a lot of myths, and we work hard to demystify what are the appropriate requirements to ensure that things are more black and white, as you say. So I know we'll touch on the insurance piece perhaps a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll jump right in. You know, I mean, I think it's a good, like I'm no radio host, you know, but I mean, I think it's a good way to pass the puck, you know, with a question to Amanda. You know, Amanda, from an insurance perspective, you know, what are some of the key risks for independent consultant that are often misunderstood or underestimated?
Thanks, Éric. I could probably talk for hours on it, but I made notes so I could stay concise for everybody on the topics. Many consultants, they underestimate the likelihood of being sued for their professional services. And they'll say like, oh no, I'm with a trusted client. It'll never happen to me. But the reality of the situation is a minor oversight, like a missed deadline or advice that you give and it doesn't produce the results. Those are what are triggering the costly legal claims. And it's regardless of if the consultant is actually at fault or not, we're seeing this. Legal defense settlements, they're really expensive. Sometimes they reach tens of thousands of dollars, and that's for the uncomplicated or frivolous claims where you haven't even done anything negligent, but you're still having to be defended.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see underinsurance or inadequate coverage. So consultants also believe that they'll just get the minimum. I'll just get the minimum. That way I can just sign my checkbox and I'm good. Because it won't happen to them. If I've heard that a million times.
Yeah.
Another misconception is that they think their staffing agency fully covers them.
Oh my God, that's the biggest one I get. You know, my agency told me that I didn't have to get it because they have an umbrella that protects me. Can you elaborate a little bit of that misconception? Please help me, help the people online. You know, I mean, it's such a myth.
It is. There is some baseline coverage. So I don't want to speak out of term. But you don't want to hang your hat on the coverage your staffing agency has for this one reason. That policy isn't in your hands. You don't know what is covered and what isn't covered. You don't have the policy documents. You haven't spoke to the broker. So this is where not being aware of what's fully covered can lead to a gap in coverage. The minute there's a gap in coverage, a duty you're performing that isn't covered by the staffing agency's policy, the claim payout, that's going to come out of your pocket at that point in time. And when we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, it's not really a risk that's worth taking, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. What type of coverage should consultant absolutely have in place, to protect themselves and operate with peace of mind, maintain their tax status? I know on my end, one that is required by CRA, we follow as much as we can with our clients, the CRA guidelines, and they highly recommend that you have something in place for to pay fixed cost, to pay mortgage, to pay things like that, if you have critical illness or you have a bike accident and a concussion or whatever, and you cannot perform your mandate, you lose your mandate, you lose your contract, and if you don't have that safety net, on my end, this is disability coverage, critical illness coverage, that are recommended. But on an E&O and on your end, what would be like I wouldn't say the bare minimum, but what type of coverage should consultants absolutely have in place on your end, Amanda?
So, yeah, at Prolink, we have the independent contractor program, or it is a specialty program for contractors. And because we know the importance of, you're right, the bare minimums, we package the coverage together. So they have to be purchased together. So we know we're giving the independent contractors kind of the full circle coverage.
Okay.
So at an absolute minimum, you're going to want your professional liability, which is also called errors and omissions. It's the same coverage, two different names. That's the coverage that protects the services you're performing, you're being hired to perform. It protects you. And then what we bake in is the commercial general liability, so that those two coverages work in tandem.
Okay.
The commercial general liability that's your contractual liability. So a lot of times you'll have a staffing agency or client say, I need to be added to your policy as additional insured. That hangs on the commercial general liability portion, not the professional liability.
Oh,
So
okay.
to meet your contractual requirements, you need both of those coverages acting together.
Okay.
So those are the minimum. And then depending on your service, I'm going to throw a cyber plug in here because it's becoming higher loss frequency. We're seeing you're going to want to inquire if the cyber and data breach coverage is required for the type of work you're performing.
Okay. And do you have like a live example, of without mentioning names or anything like that, of a consultant, that had the right insurance, and it was a significant difference for the consultant facing that claim or that dispute, this is your day-to-day business, so we hear some cases, but you're living this on a daily basis, so I'm sure that you have an example in mind of a consultant, that had the proper insurance, had a claim or a dispute, and how did it turn out?
Right. So yeah, because I went with a frivolous claim for this, because this is always where I feel the most value is in the insurance, because it's covering you if you're at fault or not. So the real life example I have, it was an investment advisor. That's where I made my notes there. And he was an independent contractor, and he was managing a couple's stock portfolio. And despite the advisor giving, like, here's your best professional advice, the husband, without the wife's knowledge, went and made some changes and liquidated some assets and did some day trading, and it led to some significant financial losses. The husband then passes away quite close in time after these transactions, and the wife is left looking at these investments that are half of what she thought they should be. She sued the investment advisor.
Okay.
And in this scenario, even though he was found not in any wrongdoing, they settled out of court because they thought if this case went to court with the wife's husband being freshly deceased, there could be some emotions. We don't know how this claim's going to go. So they decided to settle out of court, and it was a $200,000 payout covered by the policy for someone who did
Good.
nothing wrong.
Good. Thank you, Amanda. Now we'll go to our friend Andrew. You know, I didn't forget about you, Andrew. Don't worry.
I've got to also
You-
comment on.
Oh, I love your comments. You know, I mean,
I've always got to
please
reiterate
jump.
the
Yeah, please
importance-
jump in, man.
the importance of the insurance side. From my perspective, it helps to support the PSB or misclassification issues, because, you know, we talk about the 4 pillars earlier. Mary was talking about the 4 pillars, and risk for profit or loss is one of those core 4. And, you know, by definition, insurance is mitigating risk. And it's a great help for that classification purpose when it comes to, certainly from the CRA perspective. I'll let Mary handle how much weight that carries from the employment law perspective. But again, it's certainly one of those core pillars that does cross both platforms. And, you know, one of the things, Eric, I did want to also share was an update on the PSB pilot project.
Oh, thank you. Please, yeah.
Yeah, I might even, if you want, I can share a couple of slides. So let me, if you don't mind, share my
Please.
screen. Because some of you are familiar with the special project, but many of you may not. Let me start the slideshow. That'll help. And of course, am I sharing the wrong screen? That's, I think I can swap here. No, that is.
You're the tech guy.
Yeah, I am. It's got a different layout for me, and it's going to be right here. Swap presenter. There we go. So everyone knows who we are, so I won't go into our mission or how we've helped support the industry. But the CRA Personal Service Business Pilot Program was a special project put on by CRA where they were doing some analysis on staffing agencies and independent contractors and end clients. And this, unfortunately, when it comes to personal service business, which many of you may not know what a personal service business is, but it's effectively, it falls hand in hand with employee misclassification. And CRA's definition is a little bit different. I've got their definition up here, which is a lot of legalese. Mary's probably the only person in the room who truly understands what this says. But the gist of it is where CRA says, you know, but for your corporation, you would be reasonably regarded as an employee of the end client, then you are classified as a personal service business, and that means that you have a higher tax rate on any income you have in your corporation. You lose the majority of all your expenses that you can claim, and typically the CRA is going to go back and they're going to look at a multitude of years. And typically, when this happens, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars in potential liability, which is why I'm like, I do not understand how people get these people to sign up for these class actions, because I'm like, you're basically telling the CRA, I was a personal service business and you should go and audit me, but hey, I'm not the person who runs those class actions.
It's all about education, Andrew. You know, I mean,
that's the thing is people think they can play both sides because they filed their tax return and they paid their taxes. They don't realize CRA can go back and reassess you, and you could still be liable for this. If you're out there in a court arguing that you were an employee, you don't think CRA is going to come back at you and say, well, you weren't an employee when you filed your tax return, so maybe we got some issues here. Now, the reality of this was sort of a pilot project for CRA to go out there and to assess how many people were actually using PSBs, and there was a multi-phased approach. So the first phase was for them to identify the companies which they think were potentially hiring potential PSBs, and that was from June to December of 2022. And we've got some outcomes from that, which I'll share in a second. And then phase 2, CRA was going through the individual companies and to examine the randomly selected personal service businesses and to evaluate them individually. And this came in the form of letters that were sent to individual contractors. We've got copies of what those letters look like. They've been redacted so that you don't see who it is. This first letter that came out was a complete phishing exercise by the CRA.
What, 2 years ago, Andrew?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. So this was July 2022. They were basically saying, if you're an incorporated employee and your corporation is operating a PSB, your top obligations are different. And they're trying to convince these people to stand up and throw their hand up and say, hey, I'm a personal service business. I've just been filing my taxes wrong all these years. Relied on people not being educated and not understanding the difference between an independent contractor and a dependent contractor, and what are the 4 pillars and what are the things they need to be doing if they want to maintain their independent contractor status. They did have a number of people that went around and, threw their hand up and said, hey, I think I'm a PSB. We had people coming to us saying, hey, I think I'm a personal service business, but my accountant has been filing me as an independent contractor. And we had to go through a lot of education. But this was the line that killed me, was if you think you are operating as a PSB and you would like to correct the amount you reported, you can request a reassessment. Isn't that very kind of the CRA to offer you that reassessment, which would cost you, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Then they sent a follow-up letter because not enough people raised their hand and said, I think I'm a personal service business. So they sent a follow-up letter. And even though if you go on the pilot project stage, it says that this was a voluntary program, I would disagree with this being a voluntary program when you get a letter like this from CRA that says the review of your corporate income tax return for the tax year ending 2022. That doesn't seem like you don't have to respond to it, and certainly didn't leave our clients with that impression. And they had to call within 14 days of receiving this. In addition to what happened with this secondary letter is they were trying to isolate the independent contractor who lacked knowledge and lacked the language to defend themselves onto a phone call where they could effectively self-incriminate. They had a laundry list of questions they went through, and we handled a couple of these cases, and we won them all. Not in court, just simply with the CRA saying, yep, we think you're an independent contractor. But the language of the questions they were asked, it was very, very easy for someone to answer those questions.
To compromise and put yourself in trouble. Okay.
And it felt very much to me like they were trying to guide the answers in a direction that would benefit them, because if you are assessed to be a personal service business, you're going to pay substantially more in taxes than you would if you are truly an independent contractor. And like I said, with working with these individual contractors, we were able to successfully defend them, get the answers. And basically what we said to the auditors, I'm like, I'm not answering these questions on the phone with you. I will give you a written submission. And they're like, no, you have to answer these on the phone. I'm like, no, I do not. I will be providing a written submission. And that way it gave us time to go through, make sure we dotted our I's, crossed our T's, and vetted. But not everyone did that, right? I mean, they went through this and they identified 2,100 corporations that had participated in this, and they thought 220, and these are the hiring clients, were likely using PSBs. And this is out of that first phase. Now, what's I think a bit interesting to me is that they targeted, or what they found, sorry if I can move that little thing, was that 74% of the potential PSBs were in 3 key sectors, which was transportation and warehousing, professional, scientific, and technical, and construction. So I think that that's going to narrow their focus on who they're targeting over these next few years. There has been a little bit of a pause, but I don't think that this means this issue has gone away by any stretch of the imagination. And unfortunately, the courts, and Mary, I think every judge has always said every case has to be judged on its individual merits. And effectively you can look at the jurisprudence and the case history, but every case needs to be judged on its own individual merits, which leaves us in this gray area, which is frustrating for independent contractors, frustrating for staff.
For us.
frustrating for us, frustrating for everyone in this industry. And everyone wants to know, hey, just lay down the black and white rules and we'll follow them, right? I think that's what everyone wants. But, if I was the one, writing ESA and tax law, we'd be in a different situation, but I'm not.
And
now,
Andrew, do you see often recurring mistakes, that consultant makes, because you need to defend them, So basically either they call you and the barn is on fire, or they call you before the fire, but oh my God, and you realize common mistakes, that they seem to be recurring from one IC to the next. What are they, Can you share with us?
Right. So we've got four major pillars as we talked about, which is risk for profit or loss, control, ownership of tools, and integration are the four pillars. Now, where risk for profit or loss, we got amazing resources like Amanda, which demonstrate a risk for profit or loss because you've got insurance. Ownership of tools, we've got lots of literature from CRA saying that in a world with the cybersecurity issues that we have, BYO, bring your own device into a major bank is just not feasible.
Yeah.
And so the ownership of tools has become a lot more acknowledged, that the tools are the knowledge in your brain rather than the laptop you're typing on when we're talking about independent contractors in the IT world. But where we run into issues is control and integration. And, it's really easy for the CRA to ask you a question: do you abide by the policies and procedures of your client? And you go, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. And that's a big red flag that they're exerting control, and that's putting your independence at risk. Whereas when you start to educate clients that no, you should, and you do have your own policies and procedures, they may mirror those of your end client so that you can be an effective independent contractor. But you need to make sure that and understand that while your client can have the right to control the outcome of the project, they don't control the process. And again, this comes down to education and making sure independent contractors know and understand that very subtle yet very important difference for the independent contractors.
Yeah, and as human being, when CRA communicate with us, we want to be transparent. I have nothing to hide, and I will give away the farm. They ask question and all that, but what I realize after all these years is that the question, I wouldn't say that they're sneaky, but they are asked in a way that
I think they're sneaky.
They're sneaky.
I might be biased.
I was politically correct. So the basically we had that discussion before Christmas, but it's something that unless you are very, very well versed in how to answer those questions, you can put yourself in trouble just by being candid and answering in a transparent way these sneaky questions, So not to promote yourself, but I mean, how does a partnership with a CPA firm like yours, CPA for IT, what do you provide? Tangible support, for the consultant on a day-to-day basis, not just specifically for the tax status, but yes, I would like you to talk a little bit about what you provide about tax status and audit protection and things like that, because I think it's very, very unusual and a good add-on that you bring to the table, but also in your day-to-day operation with them, what do you do that can be added value?
Yeah, I think the number one biggest added value that we have is our audit representation protection, which means if you're ever audited by CRA, we'll represent you up until the third and final stages of appeals. Beyond that, you're going to tax court and you're going to need the help of a lawyer or tax lawyer to assist with that. And I think that's the number one thing, because it helps us to be there to prevent you from putting your foot in your mouth. which is, I believe, the biggest risk when it comes to PSB, as well as, the audit insurance is great for all the other issues that you might have with GST, HST, and all those other fun things that we deal with CRA on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
But this is like PSB, when we talk about this is not a new issue. I mean, it goes back to 1984 with the Weeby Door case, which was, I think, the first landmark precedent-setting case for independent contractors. And there's been, hundreds since. And I think being focused specifically on this niche market gives us a lot more insight than the average accountant would have on these specific issues. I mean, this is our bread and butter. We are CPA for IT. We're not CPA for, general small
Doctors.
business. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, and this is second generation. My father founded this firm. We've been working closely with the agencies and organizations like ACSESS, because this provides us greater insight into knowing and understanding the labor law side of it that Mary has helped defend, because they're different, but they go hand in hand, right? And being aware of issues like WSIB and, what issues the industry is facing and being protected on that, I think gives us a big leg up. We do a ton of content. We're doing webinars every 2 weeks. We do a ton on social media. We've got white papers, blogs, calculators. The list is long of all the resources we have. And I encourage those who are not existing clients to check out our website and, book a free consultation to see if we can help. But, I think that the biggest thing that we help in is, in solving issues like the CRA in this project, which was a small sample project. They said 291 people of these were determined to be PSB. Not any of the people that we helped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunately, we're not helping enough of the industry.
Yeah.
We are still a relatively small player, even though we serve, 700 or 800 independent contractors. That's a fraction of the market. And unfortunately, as much as we try to blast ourselves on social media, people aren't generally interested in listening to accountants talk about personal service business.
Yeah.
It's not as trending as, the national parks seem to be on TikTok these days, if anyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You have definitely younger kids than me.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't trend on social when we talk about personal service business, but we do our best to educate and get that knowledge out there, because, you get 291 people out of this small assessment that CRA says, we think these are PSBs.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you give them that appetite, for digging further,
Yes.
because we live in a time where, I'm no Nostradamus and I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that we are more and more in Canada having difficulty to pay for the service that we have. We live in a great country, but services, education, health costs more and more. And the government doesn't create money, it goes on income tax and things like that. So we really, really, really need, as an industry, okay, on both sides of the equation, the agencies, the staffing agencies, the IC, and all the partners, surrounding as professional these independent consultants and working in the ecosystem, to be careful and make sure that we pass the proper message and we educate, and re-educate people. One thing that I would like to bring also is last year, just as a comment, and Mary can add to this. We had two associations that were covering staffing agencies. We had the NACCB, the National Association of Canadian Consulting Businesses, and we had ACSESS also, and sometimes there was members in one and the other. And I think what you did last year, Mary, of making this a big association under one umbrella is definitely a key ingredient to fight the fight as a big happy family. So can you discuss a little bit, about this? Because I think right now you represent the vast majority of staffing agency under one big umbrella.
Sure, absolutely. And before I do that, if I may, Andrew, and I know you recall, your focus with respect to PSB is, of course, on the most recent round, if you will, 2022. But you will recall the CRA's approach, albeit a very different approach, I want to say back in 2014, 2015, when they did undertake, considerable thousands of audits at that time. Right? Not as much focus on the voluntary disclosure, but all that to say this is an issue that keeps coming up different rounds, and I think it will continue to come up. So
it goes through cycles, doesn't it? Someone comes in young and hungry and sees this opportunity. We have organizations like the ACSESS who fight it and win a bunch of cases. They're like, oh, let's leave that alone for a few years. And then someone else young comes in and says, let's go after it again.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah. And Éric, with respect to your reference to the merger, ACSESS, the Canadian Staffing Association, merged with NACCB, which some of the audience today might know, being an association very focused on the professional services segment of the industry. We have historically, over the years, worked very closely together in addressing policy issues, such as misclassification, but we did so independently. I want to say that we were, for the most part, as a matter of fact, I think in every single file, very well aligned as two separate organizations. We've now become one. Prior to the merger, ACSESS had a committee, a professional services segment committee, if you will, which a number of our members who specialize in the supply of IT contractors or professionals, engineers, and so on, typically would engage in. And we had a number of our member firms following developments of the committee very closely. Now we're one organization. So we are stronger, of course, in terms of number. Our voice at the table, I think, is very, very well represented now that we've come together. I think right now, especially here in the country, it's very important to work together. And of course, Mike Lacey, the former president of the NACCB, is now on the ACSESS board of directors. So we will continue to fight these battles, and misclassification remains at the forefront.
Thank you very much. Also, one thing, and Andrew, you can, if there's any question in the chat room, let me know. But we have also, for independent consultant, a professional association called the APCC. Okay, and for a number of years, I think that the promotion of that very important association, we were as a team maybe lacking the promotion, and right now it's black and white. When you read the CRA guidelines, it will say clearly to be part of a professional association will show us that you are more on the independent side of the business than the employee side of the business. So we will definitely supply to all of you participating today, the info about the APCC. But keep one thing in mind. Mary and ACSESS, they represent the staffing agency, and they will, in one voice, fight the fight to make sure that this industry blossom and grows and continue to strive in Canada. APCC, it's exactly the counterpart on the IC side. So we need, on the independent contractor side, a strong association to be able to do at our level exactly the same thing. So everybody online, please don't keep this a secret. We will send you the info about the APCC, but I really, really believe that we should participate and grow the membership of this association, because to my knowledge, this is the only across the country professional association for consultant. So is there any question, Andrew, in the chat at the moment, or?
We've got a couple in here.
Yeah.
So someone's asking, if I decide my own hours and use my own tools, but my client has final say on deliverables, how does that affect my classification? I mean, that's an ideal situation because your end client is allowed to control the outcome of the project and the deliverables. And the best analogy I always use is a painter. You're not going to tell a painter whether he should be cutting the lines or using tape or how he should paint the walls, but you're certainly going to be telling him what color, he's going to be painting those walls and what walls he's going to be painting. So the outcome of the project, there are certainly not any control issues in that. But setting hours, if your client is saying you got to be in by 9 o'clock and you got to be gone by 5, those start to be control issues that I would be concerned about. I don't know, Mary, if you have any thoughts further to that from, sort of a more from a law standpoint.
Yeah, not necessarily. I'll refrain from offering a pure legal opinion or too much, but I like your painter analogy, Andrew. I'll use that one. It really, I think that's a very, very good characterization, if you will. I think that common sense would dictate really the right approach. And again, we do have some excellent resources, and perhaps anyone interested, and Andrew, I can share those with you as well. I think those would be valuable because, you want to tread carefully and ensure that you're governing yourself in the appropriate manner.
Yeah. And we got another follow-up that is for Andrew or Mary. What language or clauses should I look for in a service contract that might raise red flags? And I know, again, you can't offer up legal advice. And I am not a lawyer, but I mean, from my perspective, anything that is exerting any sort of control, I mean, in my ideal world, it is a really short contract with an early termination if they are unhappy for any reason. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And we do have sample clauses as well. I'd be happy to take that one offline if that would be helpful, Andrew and Eric. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And again, as an association, Mary, I mean, we've discussed that in the past, I mean, the fact that every agencies, have their own sauce or their own contract or their own way of writing down contracts. Well, it's human being. Everybody wants to be a little bit special, but the more we educate on both sides, it would be easier for everybody if we were able to at least in general terms have some critical aspects that are consistent from one contract to the next, to make sure that we don't put from one side to the next our foot in our mouth in a written document. I mean, I've seen contracts from all kinds of agencies, and sometimes they are digging their own grave with a contract like that and giving food for problems, so again, educate on both sides of the equation.
And yes, and also ensuring that legal counsel carefully review those provisions contained in your contract. And many of we work very closely. Our external counsel, Hicks Morley, works very closely with independent contractors and staffing firms, right, in this area. So I would suggest, yes, it's very well worth an initial consultation and review, just to make sure that right out of the gate, right, you're absolutely fully compliant. So that's important too.
Yeah, I've actually, I think at the beginning of the session, you said ACSESS represents about 85% of the industry from a revenue perspective, but a much smaller percentage because there's so many small organizations that make up this industry. And unfortunately, it's those small, 1 one-man fly-by-night shops that often where we see the issues because of lack of education and knowledge. And believe it or not, I did actually come across a situation where a small organization had pulled an employment contract off the internet, reworded some things as an independent contractor agreement, which was extremely problematic, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And you know that is like the one thing that is black and white is your contract, right? The rest of it is gray. But if you're one thing that's black and white is problematic, you know, you're really putting, you know, lead boots on your feet when you're stepping into the boat there.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any other question or to the people, the viewers, you know, if you have any question, please feel free to put them in the chat. If not, just to be okay with the delay and everything, you know, I mean, we're 2 minutes away from wrapping everything up. So nothing else, Andrew?
There's a few other questions. Some, you know, for Prolink, how can I reach out to your firm to get more information? So you've got some people interested in insurance now, Amanda.
I'll type my direct email into the chat. That way, anyone who's looking for some more information can reach out to me directly. Because we have the two programs. We have a program if you're contracting with a staffing agency, and if you're an independent contractor who's contracting direct, we work with the ACSESS and have a special group program for that.
So that's very important, guys, online. I mean, if the firm that you're working, the staffing agency you're working with is a member of ACSESS, chances are that they have a program with Amanda. And then you have a very, very good rate to protect yourself for E&O and general liability. If you are working with a firm that is not a member of ACSESS and the program with Amanda is not in place, the plan B, which I want this to become a plan for everyone, is you become a member of the APCC and then you have access to Amanda's program at a different level. So thank you very much, Amanda, for that. So again, thank you everyone for...
We got one more comment here, if you don't mind.
Oh my God, Andrew.
Yeah, there's a couple, but there's one.
I wanted to finish exactly at 1:30.
I'm going to steal 1 minute of everyone's time because I think this is a good one.
Cool. Good.
It's a comment from LinkedIn from a gentleman named Daniel. He says, and you'll also, so he loved the painter analogy, I guess. And he said, you'll also give the painter a window of time too, if you're only available from 10 to 12. That's the window. And again, this, in my opinion, goes back to what I said earlier, which is the painter has policies and procedures that mirror the end client so that he can be effective. If he's trying to come in and paint your house at midnight, he's fired. He's terminated quickly. Those aren't the windows provided by the client, or the rules and policies set by the client. Those are his policies. He says, I'm available from 10 to 2 on these days. Which day would you like me to come in? He's setting the policies and procedures, but he's making sure that they align with his client base so that he can be an effective painter. That's
very good. Very good.
I just felt like I had to hit that one because I like that Daniel was picking up on my analogy, but I didn't like quite the way he was doing it.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. So now that's it. We're 1 minute late, but I thank everyone for being online. Mary, it's always a pleasure. You know, again, thank you very much for your support. Andrew, always a pleasure. And Amanda, let's work together and educate as many people as we can, have them participate in the different programs to know more about the industry and be proactive as an industry to make sure that we fight the fight that we have to fight together. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Stay tuned. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.